everyone for joining today. Today we're going to talk about creating analytic teams. We're going to talk about the benefits and why in a self-service world we should bother to create teams. We'll talk a little tiny bit about the structure of the teams and who should be on them and what does a successful team look like or have on it. And then we'll also talk about how tools can support the team and what you should be looking for in a tool. And then I'm from Quest Software, and I have a tool that we feel does a really nice job of bringing teams together for analytics. So I'll take a little time at the end and I'll kind of show off those tools, and I'll highlight some of the things that I mentioned before about how bringing teams together can be supported through a tool. I'll highlight how our tools do that. Okay, so without further introduction, there. Okay, so there is a huge drive towards self-service today. If you guys aren't already living in a self-service world with BI, I'm absolutely 100% positive that you guys are considering it, right? That self-service is how everything in the market is moving that way. And the reasons here are really simple. Everybody wants to be data-driven, but to be data-driven, you need to be agile, right? You need to be able to react quickly because data is ever changing, not just the content of the data or the size of the data or how we're storing the data, but just the kinds of questions that come up as you look at data is constantly evolving, right? The number one thing that I've seen happen over and over, and you guys probably have an experience with this as well, is the minute that I develop a fantastic dashboard or series of reports, that I've spent hours slaving over and put in front of my management team to either prove my point or bring up a topic I want to discuss, the first thing that happens is I get 5 more questions about that data. I'll say, see, look how the trend in the market is moving this way, and I can prove it by X, Y, and Z. And they'll say, well, what about if you combined X and Z? Does that give me more insight? Always driving more questions. And that's just the nature of data. The more we look at it, the more questions our brain excites, right, and wants to get answered, the deeper we want to go. To do that in a full service world, where IT has the primary responsibility for all BI. IT is the report generator. IT is the folks you have to go to get new widgets on your dashboards. Doesn't really work, right? It's a very slow process. IT's the values that a typical IT organization has is for structure and for governance and for repeatability. And those are great things. But when you're trying to get to answers fast and answer business questions and test out hypotheses, some of which may be wrong, those 3 things, while they're of value, are not the topmost value. What you want is speed, agility, flexibility, and customization, right? Those are the 3 things on a self-service world. So as we move more towards self-service, though, we got to keep some things in mind, right? What we're looking for in self-service is not anarchy, right? We're looking for planned self-service. So this is what I always say: a successful self-service is planned self-service, right? We want to have people who are engaged in the process, who are empowered to do things, to get to data, to make reports, but that are accountable. And what we don't want is sort of a free-for-all where people are generating reports based on numbers that may be incorrect, propagating those through the organization, where people are taking data, storing it on their C drive and using that as a data mart. Other people are joining to it. Other people are joining to other data. And you maybe have experienced some of this in your own organization, where when you ask a question about a report and say, hey, where did that data come from? You get crickets, right? Because no one's really sure at that moment where that data came from. And that's not a good situation. We always want to be confident with our data, but we also want to be flexible. So planned self-service is the right approach when you're going to adopt that self-service. And so when you move into a planned self-service mode, you have a really good opportunity to build teams, right? And sometimes folks think that self-service means, oh, okay, great, everybody's going to do it themselves, right? So I'm going to provide a tool. I'm going to give that tool to every analyst in my organization, and my job is done. And really, the opportunity is still really, really great to build smaller, more agile teams within your self-service organization, right? And so I'm going to go through some of the things that building a team will get you, some of the things that you can share within a team, and then we'll take a look at who should be on the team. So the first aspect that you can share about being on a team is sharing that high-level environment information. It's shocking, but a lot of times the folks who are getting data and who are reporting on data and who are business really don't even understand how to connect to the various data systems or what data systems are even available to them. Is this data, if we wanted to see marketing data about how our marketing leads fit with our actual bookings, right? If I want to make that connection between a marketing campaign and a booking, is that information even available to me? Do we code our marketing campaigns in a certain way? And where can I see a catalog of those campaigns so I can tie the data together? Information like that is very clear to the marketing team, but as self-service teams start evolving throughout your organization, it's not clear to everybody, right, where this data is. You definitely want to have a team of people that are sharing this information, right? So you want to make sure that you're setting up portals and places that contain this information, or have a tool like I'm going to show you with our tool later, where this information is shareable across a team and is not sort of tribal information that's only known by one or two people. So it's where are the data systems? Once I can get to a data system, how do all the tables relate together, right? If we're opening up access to back-end data systems so we don't need IT intervention, then we need to make it very easy for non-IT personnel, potentially even non-technical personnel, to be able to get to that data and be able to relate it together without having to generate a lot of questions. And then basic query templates, right? So basic queries already started for you so that if you're going to pull your customer information and it goes across 7 to 10 tables, which is not unheard of, right? That's pretty standard that there's going to, the data is split across many tables, making sure that the templates to query that data are already there for you. Second thing that putting the effort in and actually building a team allows you to standardize your granular data solutions. And what I mean by that is every report, every dashboard in your system is working off of not just the data, but also an prep that's happened to that data, right? So when we get our data streams, always data has to be prepped in order to make it ready for analytics. Some of that prep includes calculations, right? Whether you're adding groupings to the data or actually adding calculated fields to the data. If you're not doing that as a team, it is a ripe opportunity for folks to get it wrong or to do it differently, right? So one group might be doing a calculation one way, another group might be doing a calculation another way, and it might be a subtle difference. It might be a rounding difference, right? But if you're not doing it the same way, eventually you're going to come across reports that do not agree within your organization, that give rise to doubt if they're not in fact wrong. So you want to make sure that you're standardizing across your teams how you calculate certain data fields. Also, how you remove duplicates and what's considered a duplicate within the data, because that can skew your data counts very easily if you're not always working on deduped data. And then how you group and categorize. The number one question I get in data prep is, how do I create a grouping, right? How do I do a case statement or an if statement if we're working in SQL, an else then statement? How do I create those groups and categories? And so you want not only a tool that's going to help you do that, which we'll show you, but also you want to standardize the way that everybody's doing it so that the groups are comparing apples to apples across your organization and someone else doesn't call. I had an example the other day with a customer where they were calculating enterprise deals. And we had one group calculating enterprise deals based on the amount of the deal, right? Crossed a threshold and therefore became enterprise. Another group was doing it based on a certain set of SKUs that were specifically designated to be enterprise. And in casual conversation or in conversation with the executive team and in conversation with the sales teams, it was both correct. Enterprise was considered a term that was used loosely for large deals, but also had a very specific meaning when it came to certain parts that were being sold. So those kinds of uncertainties, when we talk in conversation, we can kind of rationalize that out and we understand what we mean. But when they're codified into a report, you want to make sure that your entire team is doing it the same way. And so building a team together means that you can share those solutions across the team. Defining common data sets. When we move away from IT governed, highly governed BI, right, where we have a specific data warehouse that is put together for us, that we're limited to, but also has a lot of things already pre-built for us, like views and things like that. When we move away from that, and we're either going directly to data sources, or we're pulling data from maybe a NoSQL source that's being populated constantly, it doesn't mean that we have to move away from or have to lose the value of setting up reporting data. Okay, so it doesn't make any sense. I mean, the roadblock to having IT maintain all your data is just what I said before. If IT is maintaining all of your data, not only the data platforms like your databases, but also your access to that data, what you can see, if they have to move it into a BI layer before it's available to you, you're going to lose time, right? Because that's not always easy to do. Your request is going to go into a total business queue, and where you are in that queue might meet their other, be matched against other groups' priorities, but your priorities are your priorities, right? So what's number one for you might end up being number 32 when it's in the queue. So you want to be able to do it yourself, but even when you're doing it yourself, it doesn't mean that if you have 10 people, or let's say realistically 5 people on your analytics team, that each one of those 5 people need to go to the back-end source. Just to query the same data, right? There are certain common data sets that all analysts use typically within the majority of their reports. We call them curated data sets, or data sets that are common to them. So usually it's got something to do with your customer information, basic customer information, basic information about the organizations, maybe it's your location information. All of that stuff is usually what you're joining together with other data to get reporting. And so being able to define common data sets that everybody is using, being able to apply those granular solutions to those data sets, like adding in your groupings and categories, adding your calculated fields, removing duplicates, and then sharing those common data sets just among your analytic team, and being able to do that in a way that's fast and agile has a great amount of benefit to your team. Because without that, each team member has to do it themselves. And so if you can share those common data sets. Now, there's lots of ways to share common data sets, from do-it-yourself, data warehouses, to cloud solutions. But as we'll talk here in a little bit, the best self-service BI solutions give you a built-in way to share common data sets, where you can define what you're querying, define all the add-ons and all the prep that you want to do with that, and then stage that data out someplace so that all of your team can go to the staged area and won't have to go back to the original data set. And then you can define the refresh rate that's right for your data in that staged area, and it will happen automatically. So defining common data sets is something that's often overlooked, right? Everybody starts self-serving on their own, but it really does make that analytic team hold together better, and it really does shorten the cycle of going from requirements to reporting if that data set's already there and halfway prepped for you. And then centralizing your workflows. So every report, think about every report that you've got out there is sort of like a workflow, right? Where it gets the data, preps the data based on a series of rules that you've defined, and then stages that data out there so that people can get to the results. Now, if you've got a centralized business intelligence platform, right, that maybe IT is managing, then once that you've defined your reporting, a true developer will take your defined report and turn it into code and make it happen within that platform. If you're doing it a little bit more ad hoc and you're doing it more self-service, and maybe you're just prototyping some data to see if it's meaningful for you, and you might be running this in your self-service team for a while before you hand it back over to an IT-run platform that, let me say, the executives use consistently within your organization, you still want to centralize your workflow. And one of the main reasons you want to do this is because if you've got team members that you can rely on, that means you're not the one person that they're going to call if there's a question about the report, right? You're not that fragile connection between your entire business and that report. And I have plenty of stories of folks who use our tool and who use other tools who can tell me about being called on vacation, or being called after hours, or being called on a sick day because someone had a question about the report, and they were the one person as the author of the report that could be asked about that report, or or could get that report out the door if it needed to go out on a different schedule. So you want to be able to take your team members and really benefit from the fact that you've got a team so that you can take a vacation and that there are other people who can pick up the work, who can manage what's been happening, who understand how you've done what how you've achieved that report and can pick up that if they have to. And so there's a lot of benefits with centralizing your workflows among your team because then everybody's got each other's back. Okay, so I've been talking about teams. So who is on this successful analytic team? Now, I've seen team sizes out there, from 5 to 10. I tend to think that 5 to 6 people seems to me, from my experience in working with our customers, to be a good sized team. But it usually has 3 types of folks on it, the successful ones do. The first one is the business experts. I have seen lots of teams put together that did not include someone who really understood the purpose of the data, right? We had lots of technical folks that understood the data, but we didn't have people there who understood the purpose of the data. And you want those folks not only accessible to your team, but actually embedded in the team, to be part of the success or failure of that team, right? Because they know what problems that need to solve. They know the history and the nuances of the meaning of the data, and they know what information is going to make the greatest impact to the business. So you always want to make sure you're including your business experts. Now, of course, you need your data analysts, and data analysts can be highly technical people or maybe a little bit less technical, but basically you want them to know the data. Maybe not the meaning of the data like the business expert do, but where is the data located, how to successfully combine it with other data, and how to prep it for a solid data foundation, right? So how do I find out a customer's contract date if their standard contract start date is not a filled field, right? Because maybe when we were collecting this customer's data, we weren't collecting it in the same way. And so over time, that contract start date is either something that is populated for our newer customers or something that has to be calculated for our older customers. That data analyst is going to know how to do those calculations and how to get you to the right results, right? So your business experts are setting up the business questions that need to be answered, and your data analysts basically know how to get to the data and pull it together to get those questions answered, right? And then lastly, data scientists. And so I have seen highly successful teams that don't have data scientists in them. But I'll tell you, more recently, I've seen really impressive teams that have an embedded data scientist. And it doesn't take a lot. It just takes one really on a team. A data scientist, someone who truly understands statistical analysis, who understands the math. And usually hand in hand with that comes some sort of coding language that they've had to learn as they've gotten their own schooling, something like Python or R, something that makes them really effective when they're given data, right? That they can run analysis against it. That can change your whole reporting outlook from really great reports that are in that traditional mode of help me understand what has happened, right? Help me understand my business. Help me understand how my prescriptions are getting fulfilled if I'm in healthcare. Help me understand my patient information. Help me understand my sales information. That's what traditional reporting is, right? I've got data that says what happened. Help me understand what happened. But a really good data scientist can turn that around and can say, help me look at the data so that I can predict what will happen next. And it's subtle, but it's powerful. And I had this great analogy that someone brought up to me the other day. I was in a presentation and someone had brought in a newspaper into this presentation. Or actually, he told a story of a colleague who had brought a newspaper into a presentation and had shown, it was today's paper, right? Had shown that to, it was yesterday's paper. And he had shown that to his audience and asked his audience, how much is this paper worth, right? How much would you pay for yesterday's news? And there was laughs in the audience and someone said nothing or 10 cents or whatever. And then he said, now what if I could show you tomorrow's paper? How much would that be worth? Right? And obviously being able to have insight into what's going to happen next is immensely valuable. And a data scientist on your team can really bring the math to the problem and help you take those really meaningful reports, which are really helping educate you to the problems that or the business decisions you need to make, and really take it to that next step, which is that predictive analytics step. Okay. So I think a successful team incorporates all of these. I think data scientists, you can have a successful team without it because there's still so much information on just understanding your business and how it's been working and understanding your market and how they've been responding to your business, which is what your data can tell you. So the business expert, I think, is essential, and the data analyst are essential. And the data scientists, I bet you in 5 years that'll be essential. But for now, it's a really nice to have that can really make your team stand out. Okay, so we know why we want to get to our team. We know the value team. I'm going to be able to create repeatable processes. I'm going to have all of the right folks on my team. I'm going to have share my workflow so people within the team have got my back. All that kind of stuff. But how exactly do you build teamwork? Because it doesn't come out of the box. It actually takes effort to build teamwork. And I don't really have something new here, but just to kind of reinforce, it's two things together, I think, that build good teams. And one of them, cannot be coded into an app, and it cannot be, bought, right? It's just good habits, right? You've got to have good team habits. Creating a team has to be an important thing. It has to be a value that you're striving for, a goal that you're all trying to achieve. You have to make sure everybody understands the value you're going to get from a team, and you're going to have the habits to build it. So without the good habits, you will never have a good team. You might have a bunch of people who work in the same area, but you won't have a cohesive team unless it's really important to you to do that, and important to everybody on that team, unless it's one of your primary missions is to build an effective team. But the other thing is the tooling, right? There's tools out there that can make it easy, and there's tools out there that can make it difficult, right? And so when you're really striving to engender good habits and to make sure that everyone on your team is sort of pulling in the same direction, and that you're getting good results in a timely manner, the last thing you need is a tool that's challenging to get there. Right? You need a tool that's supporting you, not a tool that you have to overcome. So those two things together are really, I think, where teamwork comes from. And so starting from the good habits, some of the things I've learned in building and working with teams in our customer base that are very effective and what they've communicated to us and what I've seen is, firstly, you need to clearly define what you're trying to achieve and get buy-in. Right? You can't assign people to a group and call them a team and then it'll automatically happen. Everybody on that team has to really believe in the value of the other players, right? And the value of sharing what they're doing and understanding what other people are doing, right? So I've worked with teams where there was business experts and data analysts, and they were very well set up for success. But the one team I'm thinking about, the business experts really didn't feel like they needed the analysts. Right, they felt like they could just could you just give me that in Excel and I'll cobble it together myself, was their approach. And so they never really communicated well to those data analysts, what problems they were trying to solve. And so in this particular case that I'm thinking of with one of our customers, those data analysts just kept producing what they considered, the business folks considered, boring data, the same old data, right, over and over again, really not doing anything creative like joining data together from different sources. But the reason why was because they didn't understand the business questions, and those business experts never really communicated that to those analysts. So it started off with not everybody sort of huddled together, understanding what role they played. Instead, it was folks who were assigned to a team and maybe considered it an inconvenience, and they really didn't appreciate the value of all the players. So you've got to clearly define what you're trying to achieve and get buy-in from the different players on the team. 2 is you need a regular communication channel. All the tools that you see when you're looking at self-service tools and teamwork tools, they're going to show you all about, how you can communicate through the tool, right? So from the tool here, when I have a data set ready, I can post it, and that post is going to send an automatic email. All of that's great stuff. All of that's essential stuff, but nothing beats conversation. Just nothing in the world beats conversation. I mean, I work remotely most of my time, but I'm still traveling all the time to be in front of my other colleagues, to be in front of my customers, to be in front of my developers, because communication is key, right? It's where new ideas come from and synergies. And so the communication doesn't necessarily have to be in person, but you need a regular phone call at least, right? Or you need to use something like Skype or Glip or Slack, some way that you can actually ask a question on the fly and get an answer. from folks. So you need to really establish good communication channels. And there are communication tools out there which are really helpful at engendering those conversations, because that's really key to building a team. You can't really be on a team if you don't have a good rapport with everybody on there. And then lastly, you just need to be willing to adopt what's working and iterate on what's not. I've gone to lots of teams where we've had our regular communication meeting, same one, same time, every day, every week for years, and no one on that team actually thinks that that's an effective meeting. Why we've done that, I don't know, because it was set up on our schedules and we went. But really, you need to stop every month, every 2 months, and you need to have the courage to say, hey, I don't think this is working. Let's figure out why it's not working, and let's iterate till we get to something that works. Maybe a shorter meeting more often will work for you, right? Or maybe establishing an agenda ahead of a meeting helps keep everyone focused so that you don't have folks who tend to ramble, sort of taking everybody in different directions, right? So you need to be able to adopt what's working and iterate on what's not working until it works. And really key to that one bullet is setting aside a time to do a retrospective, right? Just setting aside 30 minutes once a month where all you're going to talk about as the team as to what's working and what's not working, right? Not about the work itself, just what's working and what's not working. If you don't dedicate time to retrospective, you cannot iterate and make things better. It won't just gradually get better, or very rarely. Okay, so those are some of the good habits I've pulled from my experiences. Let's talk about how tools can support these habits. First of all, you should look for a single tool. Right? See if you can find, best of breed is great, and there's always going to be best of breed tools, right? But as much as possible, as much as makes sense, try to do like at least one type of work within a single tool. Right? If you've got a great visualization tool, maybe stick with that great visualization tool. But if that tool is not good at data prep, then find a single good data prep tool. Don't just use 5 different data prep tools and stick with your one visualization tool. Switching tools wastes time, makes it hard to share and intermingle work and data. So try to get down, maybe a single tool is a bit of an overreach, but get down to a limited tool set, is just as many tools as you need and no more. Second, connectivity, right? At least from the data prep perspective or getting the data right, it needs to be able to connect to anything, not just what you're using today. Data is moving so rapidly. We recently did a survey of about 5,000 of our Toad Oracle customers, just asking them what the biggest initiatives in their organization were. And the biggest initiatives moving to cloud. And that's not always moving to Oracle Cloud. Some of them are moving to Postgres or MySQL or other sources. The second biggest initiative was moving to NoSQL, right? So data is moving, right? As folks are finding cheaper, more reliable, better ways to store that data where they don't have to define it before they store it, or they don't have to pay for the servers necessarily. They could pay for it as a service. Data's moving. So make sure that whatever you're using can connect to what you're using today and what you may use tomorrow, which really means that you need to go with a company where connectivity is a big point with them, right? They really care about their connectivity catalog so that they're going to have to be covered no matter where I go. And it should have a centralized collaboration layer, right? Now you can definitely collaborate with your coworkers using SharePoint, wiki pages, right? There's all sorts of collaboration tools out there. But as much as possible, if that collaboration tool, either through plugins or through native functionality, can coexist well with your tool of choice or tools of choice, the more likely they're going to use it. I think we've all worked for companies that have SharePoint portals that are dead, right? Where folks never refresh the data. And if you don't refresh the data, then people learn not to go there. And they're just these stale areas, right? Because the collaboration layer itself doesn't solve the collaboration problem. It's a layer that needs to be used and used regularly. And one of the reasons why certain layers aren't used is because you have to leave the tool and then use the layer. So you do your work, and then you're expected to go someplace else and journal, basically, or write up what you've done. And a lot of times that won't happen. If collaborating is not part of the work itself, a lot of times that's the part that gets cut and people forget to do or don't have time to do or don't value. And then whatever you're doing in today's world, customer is king, right? User is king. And so you should demand something that's quick to set up, that quick to get running, and it's affordable, right? I think as a software vendor, I can tell you that the market of today, the customers of today, is completely different than the customers, let's say, 20 years ago, or even 15 years ago, or 10 years ago. We are all used to really nice applications, right? On our phones right now, probably most of us have 20 plus applications that were easy to install, easy to use, and give us great value. Some of them, most of them, are free, right? So the customer demand has gone up, and the vendor should be meeting that demand. So if you're dealing with something that's really too difficult, or you have a large PSO cost, professional services cost to get up and running, it's not quick to set up, you need IT intervention, you might want to reconsider that product, right? Because you want to, as the customer, you want that app really making it easy for you to use. That's our job as a vendor. Okay, so I am very close to the end here. I don't have a lot of time, but let me just quickly talk to you about what solutions we provide, and I'll show you a couple of quick screens here, and then we'll open it up for questions. So within the Quest software portfolio, we have 2 Toad products. Toad is one of our well-known brands, and we work with developers and DBAs. These 2 products, Toad Data Point and Toad Intelligence Central, are really built for an analyst and analytic teams. Toad Data Point is what is installed on a workstation for the individual analyst to use. And Toad Intelligence Central is that collaborative layer that as I do my work, I'm allowed to publish it and share it with my other users on my team. Okay, so these 2 products. What we do is not the BI dashboard. What we do is the data prep. So helping you connect to data, cleanse that data, bring it together to create a single source of data, maybe create pivots off that data and share that amongst your group. That's what we do well. There are great tools out there, Tableau probably being the best known, but also Qlik is fantastic, that are really great at visualizations and coming up with corporate dashboards and things like that. We work well with those tools. We are all about the data and the prepping of the connecting to, querying, and prepping that data. With that, I'm going to go over very quickly here, I think, to my products. Oh, there I go. So this is Toad Data Point. This is the desktop tool that your users would connect to. We connect to nearly every source out there, including NoSQL sources like Hive and Impala and Cassandra, Mongo. We connect to everything. So you buy one tool and you have all that connectivity. From here, you can connect and you can build queries very easily. Here I've got a query I'll build very simply, just dragging and dropping tables. If you don't have a relationship that's already part of your backend system, you can create relationships on the fly, customize them, query them. Very simple. You can do it this way. You also have an editor that you can use if you want to write the SQL directly, or you can take this diagram and you can open it in that editor and see the SQL that's being written for you. So all sorts of great query tools. Once you have your data, you can transform and cleanse that data. So whether you know SQL really well or you're just a novice with SQL, you can do things like take a phone number and you can extract out the area code, right? So I can say at this separator, split it into 2 columns. Now I've got this one and I can trim out the opening parentheses. So very quickly I can set up a set of rules that I can work with this data, whether I'm extracting a date range. Here, for example, I'm going to extract out the year and the month and create new fields, whether I'm going to extract, clean up data, change the format, all sorts of things. So now here, very easy to do. And then each one of these things that I'm doing, I'm actually creating a series of steps, which I could then share with my team. And so just kind of taking it down to the last minute here, this is the Intelligence Central platform. So this is where I share data with my team. So within the tool itself, I can choose to publish the data or publish the steps to get to the data. And then that data is then available through a web browser out here. I can connect to this through other tools like Tableau or Qlik or Cognos or business intelligence platforms so that they can pull the data, or users just can come out here and actually just come out here and grab the data directly off of this web browser. So that's probably the quickest I've ever done a demo of DataPoint and Toad Intelligence Central, but it is a tool that helps the individual producer of the analytics put it together with a wide variety of very, very robust tools. And then it also allows the consumer to get to it in a wide variety of ways, including a simple web browser. And with that, I will open it up for, I'll take it back for questions, right? So that we can, oh, sorry. I actually will let you know you can get a free 30-day trial on www.toadworld.com or quest.com of data points and Intelligence Central, or you can email me directly if you're interested. Our email address is here, julie.hyman@quest.com, right? So just first name dot last name at quest.com. You can grab this, email me, and I can set you up with a trial or even set you up with a demo of it if you'd like, or a training if you already have it. So. Okay, so with that, I will open it up for any questions that have come in.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Julie. That was great information. Outstanding. Okay. Do we have some questions here? Let me open this up here. So this is going back to when you were talking about who makes up the data team. The question is, if a team has embedded business subject matter experts, do you see them being mostly full-time or part-time involvement in those teams?
It depends, right? It depends on what your how much you can stomach. I think it's really nice to have somebody on a team. So let's say a business team, right? So I'm in a product management group. So we have a team of product managers. What's really nice if we have one person on our team that's dedicated to the analytics of our business, right? Making sure that we have the tools that we need, that we're looking at the right reports, all of that stuff. And so that would be the person that would then also be on that analytic team. So if you can afford it, it's good to have one person that's really just looking at the analytics of whatever it is you're doing, because a lot of times as we move forward and we're just doing, we forget to stop and ask those questions. What are we learning? Are we doing it right? These webinars that we put on, how much are they costing us? What are we getting from them? What is our audience getting from them? Kind of pulling all that together. And if you don't dedicate someone to that, you have a tendency just to continue business as usual without really asking good questions about how effective it is.
Yeah, no, that makes great sense. Okay, in regards to the tool that you were just showing, how do you actually store those transformation steps? Is there some sort of language that you're storing in a database, or how would you be able to interpret that?
So for us, it's proprietary. Well, actually, it's two things. So in the transform, if I go to create a transform step here, I'll just create a calculated field. I have a couple of choices. One, I could limit myself to only having choices here that are SQL compatible, so that I could actually just make sure that everything I do is completely SQL. Or I can open that up and I can be using regular expressions or whatnot. And so in those cases, it becomes proprietary to the system because we're using regular expressions, things like that. But I can take these items, I can put them in my local library, and then I can publish them to other data point users who could pull them. So if all of your teams are using the same tool, then it's very easy to share these kinds of things with each other. It's another good reason to try to keep your tool set simple, because if folks are using all sorts of different tools, you're going to have a lot of conversations then about how to translate from one to another. But if you can stick at least with one tool for one portion of your process, everyone's using the same tool, then it's sort of natural that things share.
Sure. On the Intelligence Center tool, is there a place then? Is there kind of like a data dictionary out there that end users could use to find or get information about some of these transformations?
Yes. So there's a common transformation library that has all of the transformations out here, and when you publish them, you can give them, descriptions, and it's up to the users to supply this descriptions and/or tags. And then as far as data dictionary, some of the things that you can do with DataPoint, in particular, is you could create a diagram of your data. So I pulled these two tables together, and I had to know how they were connected. I could have documented that. Oops. customer. I could have created a diagram of that relationship. It's a pretty simple relationship, right? Customer ID to customer ID. But I could have created a diagram of that relationship, or more complex ones, and I could publish that as well. So you could be publishing documentation about how your data, whether within the same database as I've done here, or I could pull in SQL Server tables into this diagram as well to show how data is interconnected between systems. You could publish that to Intelligence Central, and then anybody using Toad can pull that in and can not only see the diagram, but could actually start their query from the diagram. So I said send a query, and now I've started a query, and then I could even turn this into a direct SQL query with a simple click. So you can choose to share documentation out there, which I think is a great, great idea.
Okay, great. Let's see here. Someone is inquiring if you have a nonprofit pricing model.
So we might. We do have folks who work directly with nonprofits. So if you want, you can send me your information to the julie.hyman@quest.com, and I can get you in touch with the right person. I only giggle a lot because our tool, like one of the great things I think about our tool is it's one of the most affordable on the market. There are some really great tools out there. So self-service data prep has really risen in the market over the past like 3 years. Gartner defined it as a segment of BI, has come out with 2 quadrants on it. It's really kind of it's upped its game as far as a specific area of the market. And with it, there's some great companies that have started to compete in this area, which I think is great. Competition is really, really good. What I like about our tool is it's really affordable. A lot of these tools are very, very pricey. And so I like the pragmatic and practical approach that we take to it, which is empowering users and empowering teams versus, again, trying to put together a platform, an enterprise platform, which sounds good, but costs a lot.
Back to the documenting part, do you have the ability to put any type of descriptions or documentation on like the columns within the tables?
On the column tables, you can add notes right now overall, but you can't put it on each individual column. No. Um,
Okay.
the one thing I will say, not to answer every question with a yes, because sometimes it's just a no, but the curated data sets, being able to come up with those common data sets, right, that everybody's using. So, and you don't have to join customer and contact to get customer name, first name, last name, home phone address, right? That's already joined for you and it's been staged out there either as a view that's real time or something that's refreshed every evening if you don't need the data to be real time. Having that as a tool and being able to stage that data out there and then being able to annotate that data is, I think, is a good thing to look for. So in this case, this customer master list is out here on Intelligence Central, and I have the ability to put descriptions and tags and show the columns out here and add comments to my heart's content on this, not on the diagram of the actual tables themselves, but on this, what I would call a curated data set, which might be bringing 5, 6 tables together. I don't need to know that. I just need to know, sort of like the overall resulting data set and the notes associated with that.
Oh, here's a good one. Inquiring, is there any integration with the Toad data modeler tool?
There is. So the Intelligence Central in particular, you can take what you've done in Toad Data Modeler and publish it into Intelligence Central. So users can access it either from their data modeler if you're dealing with other architects, or you can actually access it from this web browser. And you can actually access not just the data model, but also the HTML report of that data model too. I don't have any examples of that in my demo system here. But yes, most Toad products can work within this collaboration layer. So if you have Toad Oracle SQL statements that you want to share with your analysts, you could do it through this DB2, SAP, SQL Server, all of that, and Data Modeler is one as well.
Okay. In regards to like the data teams, how do you find it best to handle like the business expectations, the user expectations?
Of what the data team will do?
Yeah, like how the data team works with the business. Is that kind of the role of the business expert on the data team to help manage those expectations?
Yeah, I think so. I think a successful data team, first of all, has a really good, if they are truly dedicated to that data team, they have a really good sort of executive backing, right? We are creating this data team, right, specifically to help with reporting, and we're going to, show off what they've been doing, kind of make sure you are your own good PR to your own organization. I've seen lots of folks who are really good to an organization. You really provide benefit, but don't know how to PR that to the organization. So no one knows that they're doing these great things. And that can engender all sorts of problems, right? If you're not testifying to your own good works to your organization, not bragging, but letting them know how productive you're being and how you're helping, then it leads to all sorts of questions like, what do those people do over there anyway? Right, which is
Oh,
never helpful to anybody. So
no, that's
I
great.
so I think the business user has to set the expectations, but the executives have to set the expectation that this is what this team is here for, and we are dedicating them to this because we value as a company data, right? We value being data driven, and that from an executive level, besides being a great thing that people say about themselves, it really does change how you do business because when people say, hey, what's your go to market for this new product that you're doing, and they say, we're going to do this, 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 and this, people who aren't data driven don't ever ask why. Why are we doing a webinar on this? Show me how webinars make a difference, right? Why are we doing it this way? People who don't ask that why, they get people do things because that's the way they've always been done, or they have a tendency to do that. But if you know you're going to have to justify what you're doing with data, then you're gonna be a little bit more aware of that aspect, right? Make sure that the presentation you have on a concept or I don't know, a quarterly business review has good data behind it, isn't just a recitation of here's what we did the last 2-3 months. It's more about here's the results we got. Anyway, so I do think the business person does have to set that expectation with the business person that's helping that team, the subject matter expert, either embedded in the team or working with the team. But I also think it has to come from the executive level that this is an important thing that we expect our all our areas of our business to be able to back their play with data.
No, I think that's spot on. That's great to have that champion and showcasing and demoing your work and then making sure everyone's staying on point. Yep, all good key points. I like that. All right. I don't see any other questions right now. Do you have any other parting words of wisdom, advice that you'd like to share with our community before we sign off?
Yeah, so this is just again just my opinion too, is that if you really are trying to move towards self-service, um, don't let someone move there for you. So don't let it be IT that chooses your self-service platform. I mean, I'm not against IT at all, but make sure that, I mean, you're the self, right? That's going to have to use it and participate. So make sure that you are actually comfortable with the tools that are being provided to you or people are looking at. And it's not someone else just saying, okay, you're self-service and here are your self-service tools, right? Involve yourself in that as well because it's being able to show through data what you're doing and how it's improving the business is just an amazing feeling, right? And if you're not comfortable with the tools, yourself, you probably won't get to that point where you're comfortable enough, with your own analytics.
All right. Well, that's it. That's all we have for today. I want to thank Julie and I want to thank Quest for presenting today and for being a great sponsor for us. Um, and thanks everyone that joined. I want to thank you. Hope you have a good remaining part of your day or a good evening, whatever it might be. And that's all we have for today. Thanks everyone for joining us. And until next time.
Thank you.